There are no emotionless transactions in the world of selling a small business. This is not mergers and acquisitions world. This is the small business world that I'm talking about, where somebody has started a business, they've grown a business, they've built that business, they've worked 10 times harder than they ever would have in a job, and they decide that it's time for them to sell that business, that asset that they've built. Well, you still have a human being at the core of that transaction. So if you I think it's twofold. If you have a business and you're getting ready to sell, or you have your business on the market, I think just knowing that it's going to be emotional the whole way along. I think if you can have that expectation when things do get a little heated or frustrated, you can keep the end goal in mind, which is important so that you can see the sale all the way through to the end. I know many times small business owners can be a little bit tormented. Like, I know I need to sell my business because my wife wants to spend more time with me, or my husband, or I want to spend more time with my grandchildren, but I'm not quite ready to let go. And then once you engage, let's say, with a buyer and things become emotional, you can then question your decision. And then on the flip side, if you're buying a business, it's also going to be emotional because let's say, you have a small business owner that does things a certain way, and maybe you're a slightly younger buyer coming in, and maybe you live in a world where everything is paperless and you've been using technology, for your whole career. You don't understand why everything's paper, and even the process of due diligence can become frustrating because you're requesting things and you can't get them, or things seem antiquated. Or the other thing is the communication that can be very emotional. So I'm in a position where I work between people as a business broker. So there tends to be a filter. The seller can speak freely to me, the buyer can speak freely to me, and then, I'll deliver information back to them that's non-emotional. But I can, if a buyer and seller are speaking to each other directly, even if you have lawyers and accountants involved, things could get heated very quickly. So I think if whether you're going to sell the business yourself, buy a business yourself without, you don't have to use a broker to do that. There's other ways to do it. But just having the expectation that it's going to be stressful and emotional. On the buyer side, it's going to be stressful and emotional because they're going to have to um, put up earnest money. They're going to have to make an offer. They're going to have to negotiate the offer. They have to go through due diligence. They have to secure financing. There's a certain point in the transaction where they could risk losing their earnest money. And then, of course, for the seller, they're just having to answer constant questions and have somebody delving in and asking why, and they're having to explain themselves. But if I think if you're a business owner and you've figured out your own why, it's really important to you to sell your business. I think if you take the approach of trying to understand your buyer's why as well, then you can work together a little bit more harmoniously, because there's negotiations that have to happen. There are things that each of you need to, because you've got different wants and needs in order to facilitate this, go through this deal process and close the deal. But I also think, you have to look at the common goal, because otherwise it can become very, it can become hostile. It can become egotistical, driven by ego, and that could be a problem. So knowing your why as a business owner, and then knowing your buyer's why is very helpful. But just know that this is not going to be an emotionless transaction. And I think sometimes the buyers feel a little less emotional in the beginning, but of course, once they have put an offer on the business and they get into due diligence, that's where it can become emotionally charged for the buyer, because maybe they find out things that they weren't aware of, that they wanted to be told about, or now they're, you know, now they're incurring expense, engaging accountants and lawyers. So that becomes stressful and emotional. So there are different points of the transaction that are more stressful for each party at different times. So I think, being aligned and finding that ideal buyer for a business, it takes a little bit more work, but I think it can help. But you just have to be ready